They fired me for attending one job interview. No warning, no thank you, just out. I'd built their success from the ground up, and they tossed me like trash. So I did the unthinkable. I started my own company, and within a year, I became their biggest competitor. Here's what really happened. I told myself it would be quick. In and out, 1 hour tops. I even changed in the car, swapping my polo for a crisp button-down and trying to make my scuffed dress shoes look half presentable with spit and sleeve polish. The interview was scheduled for 2:30. I parked 3 blocks away so no one would see my car, because I still had to go back to the office. Still had a team meeting at 4. The company I interviewed with wasn't even a dream job, just something different. Something that didn't have me grinding 60 hours a week while upper management called it showing initiative. I wasn't looking to jump ship out of greed. I was drowning, and this felt like a lifeline. My boss had been piling on more work every month without so much as a thank you. Promises of a promotion dangled just out of reach. Raises delayed, recognition absent. I was tired of being invisible. The interview went well, maybe too well. They asked about the projects I'd led, the clients I'd won, the systems I'd built from scratch. I talked about all of it. And for the first time in a while, someone actually listened. They respected what I brought to the table. Respected me. As I shook hands with the hiring manager, something inside me shifted. Hope, maybe. Or maybe just the realization that I'd been settling for scraps in a place I helped build. I was back at my desk by 3:55, coffee in hand, breathing like I hadn't sprinted across downtown in business casual. No one seemed to notice. The team meeting started, and I made my usual contributions. By 5, I'd convinced myself I was in the clear. I wasn't. The next morning, I got the email. Please see me in HR. I already knew. The receptionist couldn't meet my eyes as I walked past her. My manager was waiting in the room, arms folded, HR rep beside him, lips pursed like she'd been chewing lemons. We understand you attended an external interview yesterday, he said. Just like that. No preamble. I didn't lie. Didn't deny. I did. He nodded like that confirmed everything he needed to know. This company values loyalty. I almost laughed. Loyalty? After all the overtime I didn't charge for? After covering for his mistakes in that last client presentation? After carrying 3 people's workloads for the last 6 months? But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded. We're going to part ways, he continued, like we'd come to that conclusion together. Effective immediately. HR slid a termination form across the table like a used napkin. That was it. 4 years, hundreds of late nights, 1 interview, and I was gone. As I walked out of that building for the last time, I wasn't angry yet. Not devastated either. Just still, like the air before a storm. Something had cracked open inside me. I didn't know it then, but they hadn't ended my career. They'd just started my next chapter. It didn't happen overnight. The shift was slow, subtle at first, like the temperature in a room rising until you realize you're sweating. It started when we got a new VP, slick haircut, navy suits, PowerPoint slides with more buzzwords than meaning. He shook everyone's hand like he was campaigning, promised transparency, collaboration, and innovation. Within weeks, people were being reshuffled, titles changed, projects reassigned. The vibe changed too. Where there used to be camaraderie, there was caution. Meetings started running longer, but saying less. There were whispers in the hallways, sudden one-on-ones that didn't end with smiles. My manager, who used to ask for my input, started speaking over me in meetings. Credit for my work started drifting upward, like steam from a coffee mug. One day, a client complimented a solution I'd spent weeks refining, and my manager said, "Glad we were able to pull that together for you." We. Like he'd written a single line of code. Then came the performance calibration sessions, a phrase that sounded more scientific than it was. In reality, it meant someone from HR shadowed you for a week, scribbling notes while pretending not to. They asked vague questions about workflows and collaboration. At first, I answered openly, thought they were trying to improve things. Then one of my teammates, one of the good ones, was let go due to redundancy. 2 weeks later, they posted a job listing for the exact same role with a different title and lower pay. That's when I stopped talking in those meetings. The worst part wasn't the pressure, it was the confusion, the mixed messages. One week I was being groomed for leadership. The next I was told I needed to demonstrate more cross-functional value. I wasn't sure if I was being set up for a promotion or a pink slip. I started double saving everything I worked on, emailing copies of deliverables to my personal inbox. Not to steal anything, just to prove I'd actually done it. I knew I wasn't the only one walking on eggshells. You could feel it in the way people stopped chatting by the coffee machine, in the way conversations dropped to whispers when someone from management walked by, a kind of collective holding of breath. We were all waiting for the axe. We just didn't know whose neck it would fall on next. I tried to hold on, told myself to ride it out, but every day, it got a little harder to pretend I was okay. I wasn't sleeping much. My jaw stayed clenched even on weekends. I'd find myself staring at spreadsheets, unable to remember what I was doing. Looking back, maybe the interview wasn't just a risk. Maybe it was a lifeline. I just hadn't realized yet how close I was to the edge, and how ready they were to push me off. They called me in at 9:06 a.m. sharp. I remember the exact time because I'd barely finished my first sip of coffee when the message popped up. Please come to HR, now. No subject line, no explanation, just a gut punch waiting in my inbox. My pulse jumped. I knew. Deep down, I already knew. HR was on the 3rd floor. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, like somehow delaying the moment by a few seconds would make a difference. The hallway felt longer than usual, every step echoing like it knew something I didn't want to admit. Inside, my manager was already sitting at the table, hands folded like a priest hearing confession. The HR rep sat beside him, fake smile plastered on, legal pad in front of her like she was ready for a deposition. No one asked me to sit. I pulled out the chair myself, careful not to show my hands were shaking. We understand you attended an external interview yesterday, my manager began, no emotion in his voice. No small talk, no pleasantries, just a straight line to the execution. I didn't lie, didn't stall. I did. He nodded, like I'd confirmed some hypothesis. We take loyalty seriously here. Seeking other opportunities while employed with us, especially during business hours, violates the terms of your contract. My contract. The same one they'd reworded 3 months ago without explanation, slipping it in under the guise of a company-wide policy refresh. I hadn't read it closely. My mistake. We're letting you go, HR said, cutting in with a tone that was somehow both apologetic and indifferent. Effective immediately. That was it. 4 words. No performance review, no second chance, no discussion. Just done. We'll need your badge, she added, like she was collecting a parking ticket. I unclipped it and placed it on the table. My hand was steady now. Something in me had gone still. They slid a paper across the table. Termination agreement, standard language, no severance, no benefits continuation, just an NDA and a clause about not disparaging the company. I signed it without reading, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of asking questions. The security guard was already waiting outside when I stood up. A silent escort, no eye contact like I was being walked off the premises for stealing. I glanced back once, just once, at the office I'd poured 4 years into. The desk I stayed late at. The whiteboard still filled with my notes. None of it mattered now. I stepped into the parking lot and sat in my car for a long time. The silence was loud. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I wasn't even hurt. I just felt erased, like I'd never been there. But somewhere in that stillness, a new thought broke through. If they thought this was the end of my story, they'd seriously underestimated the wrong person. I sat in the car with the engine off, hands on the steering wheel, staring out at the building that had swallowed 4 years of my life. I should have driven away, but I couldn't move. Not yet. Not while the shock still clung to my skin like sweat. 4 years. That's what I gave them. Early mornings, late nights, skipped lunches. I showed up when others called in sick, took on projects that weren't mine, covered for people who were out of their depth, led teams without the title, delivered results without the recognition. And for what? A cold meeting and a walk to the door. I replayed every moment, every choice. I thought about the time I missed my sister's wedding rehearsal because a client presentation got pushed last minute. About the weekends I spent debugging code instead of decompressing. The nights I told myself that loyalty would pay off, that hard work meant something, that eventually someone would notice. They noticed. Just not the way I expected. The first real emotion hit me like a wave. Not sadness, not fear. It was humiliation. The idea that I'd been so invested in something that never really saw me, that I was disposable, that my years of commitment could be wiped out by a single line on a spreadsheet or a whisper in a boardroom. I felt like a fool. On the passenger seat, my laptop bag sat unopened. The same one I'd carried every day for years, worn at the corners, stained with coffee and long hours. It felt useless now, like a tool I no longer had a reason to carry. I drove home on autopilot, didn't turn on music, didn't call anyone, just silence, thick and heavy. When I walked into my apartment, it felt too quiet, like the air knew something had changed. I dropped the bag by the door, sank into the couch and stared at the ceiling. What now? I'd always been the reliable one, the one who stuck it out, who didn't jump ship when things got tough. I believed in playing the long game, but now I saw the truth. The game had never been fair, and I wasn't even a player. I was a piece. I thought about calling someone, friends, family, but what would I say? That I got fired for trying to find something better? That I'd been blindsided? That I was angry, not because they let me go, but because they made it clear how little I ever really mattered? I sat with all of it, the sting, the shame, the silence. Then, slowly, something else started to settle in, a different kind of stillness. Not defeat, clarity. They threw me out like I was nothing, but I knew who I was, and I wasn't done. I just needed time, not to grieve, to regroup, because now I wasn't playing their game anymore. I was about to build my own. The first few days felt like free fall. No alarm clock, no inbox full of passive-aggressive emails, no deadlines, no deliverables. For a minute, it almost felt like a break. But breaks don't come with this kind of silence, the kind that hums in your ears when you don't know what comes next. I tried to keep a routine, woke up early, made coffee, opened my laptop like I still had somewhere to be. But the cursor blinked back at me, a silent reminder that I didn't. No work calendar, no meetings, just me, jobless, with a spreadsheet titled New Opportunities that had exactly 3 listings and 0 responses. I updated my resume. Again, I rewrote the cover letter. Again. Tried to make it sound hopeful, forward-looking, not desperate. But the truth was, I felt hollow. My pride had taken the biggest hit. Getting fired was one thing. Getting fired for trying to leave? That was something else. It felt like being punished for wanting more. I'd always been the type to have a plan, a backup plan, a backup to the backup. But now, I was staring down rent in 2 weeks with no income and no idea how long unemployment benefits would take to kick in. I wasn't broke yet, but I could see the edge from where I stood. And that edge was getting closer. I didn't tell many people. A couple of friends checked in, people I trusted. "You'll bounce back," they said. "You're smart, you're driven. Someone's going to see your value." And I nodded, smiled, thanked them. But inside, all I heard was the echo of that HR rep saying, "We're letting you go." I started calculating. What could I cut? Streaming subscriptions, Uber Eats, the gym I never went to. Every little expense became a threat. Every dollar, a decision. I hadn't been this close to the wire since college. Back then it felt temporary. Now it felt like failure. One night I found myself sitting in the dark, lights off, scrolling job boards with a slice of stale pizza in one hand and my pride crushed in the other. It hit me then. I wasn't just unemployed. I was unmoored, stripped of structure, direction, identity. I'd tied so much of who I was to that job, to being needed, being useful. Without it, I didn't know who I was. I hit rock bottom not with a bang, but with a quiet, suffocating thud. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It's solid. It's real. And when you hit it, there's nowhere lower to go. You either stay there or you push off. Crawl, claw, build. I wasn't ready yet. but I was close, and sometimes close is enough to start. I stopped feeling sorry for myself somewhere around day 6. The fear was still there. Rent didn't magically go away, but the panic had burned off. What replaced it wasn't rage exactly. It was colder than that, sharper. A quiet, simmering resolve that settled deep in my chest. I started thinking, really thinking, about everything I'd built for them, the systems I streamlined, the client workflows I created from scratch, the processes that worked not because of upper management, but in spite of them, the relationships I'd nurtured, the clients who asked for me by name, the ones who only renewed because I made it worth their while. I wasn't just a cog in their machine, I was the machine. And they threw me out like I was a liability. I opened a blank document and started writing. No formatting, no fluff, just a list. Every project I led, every deal I helped close, every solution that had my fingerprints on it. The list got long, longer than I expected. When I finished, I leaned back in my chair and read it all over. Then came the next question. What would it look like if I built that list for myself? That's when something shifted. The bitterness stopped biting. The loss stopped echoing, and in its place, something new started to take root. Not a fantasy, not a revenge fantasy anyway, just possibility. I started digging, researching, looking at the market, who was doing what kind of companies offered the same services I used to manage, how they presented themselves, who their clients were. It didn't take long to realize something. Most of them were all talk, big branding, flashy taglines. But when I looked under the hood, sloppy deliverables, outdated strategies, hollow promises, and clients were noticing. I could see it in the reviews, the forums, the quiet frustration beneath polite testimonials. There was room here, not just for another business, but for a better one. I didn't know how to start a company. Not really. I'd never written a business plan, never pitched to investors. But I did know how to deliver. I knew what clients needed and what they hated. I knew how to get results without pretending to be something I wasn't. And most importantly, I knew what it felt like to be underestimated. I wasn't going to advertise anything yet. I wasn't ready to announce. But behind the scenes, the foundation started forming. I bought a domain name, sketched out a simple brand identity, picked a name that meant something only to me, something about starting over, something quiet, steady. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because this wasn't about making noise. This was about focus, precision, patience. I didn't want to be loud. I wanted to be undeniable. It started as a whisper. A question I didn't want to say out loud, not even to myself at first. But it kept circling, getting louder every time I opened another job listing and felt my stomach turn. What if I didn't go back? What if I didn't work for someone else again? I'd been trained to think in hierarchies, job titles, reporting lines, next steps in your career. But all those steps had led me to a dead end. And when I looked at my old job, really looked at it, I started to see the truth. The clients weren't loyal to the company. They were loyal to me. They trusted me with their timelines, their problems, their money. I was the one who stayed late to make sure a campaign launched on time. I was the one who picked up the phone when the strategy went sideways. And when things went right, I was the reason, quietly, consistently. The company never advertised that. They never acknowledged it. But the clients knew, and more importantly, I knew. That thought, it bloomed like a seed cracking through concrete. Maybe I didn't need a boss. Maybe I could do this on my own. I started testing the idea in small ways, made a list of my past clients, highlighted the ones who had expressed frustration with how things were run, the ones who had hinted they wished I had more control, the ones who called me, not my manager, when they needed something fixed. I drafted a message. Nothing pushy, nothing official. Just a friendly check-in. Hope all's well. I've moved on from the company, exploring new opportunities. Let me know if you ever need support. The replies trickled in, curious, cautious, but positive. More than one asked where I'd ended up. A few asked if I was freelancing. That was the moment. Right there. I wasn't technically, but maybe I could be. I ran some numbers. Rent, groceries, the bare minimum to stay afloat. If I could land just 1 or 2 small contracts, I could survive a few months. Long enough to build a base. long enough to prove the idea wasn't crazy. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, not my family, not even my closest friends. I wasn't ready to explain it out loud. The idea felt fragile, like a flame in the wind. But inside, something had caught fire. The market was there, the clients were there. The only thing missing was the courage to say it out loud. I can do this, on my own, for real. No more bosses, no more gatekeepers, no more waiting for permission to rise. It wasn't a fantasy anymore. It was a plan. I started with the names I knew best. Not the ones who liked my LinkedIn posts or sent birthday messages once a year. The ones who'd been in the trenches with me. The clients who called me after hours. The colleagues who pulled double shifts beside me. The people who saw what I actually did, not just what was listed in my job description. I didn't blast out an email, didn't post anything public. This wasn't about making an announcement. It was reconnaissance. Quiet calls, direct messages, voice notes. Conversations that started with small talk and eased into the real question. Would you work with me if I went solo? Some hesitated, said they were locked into contracts. Others wanted to see something more official. But a few didn't even blink. About time, one said. I was hoping you'd do this, said another. I'll run it by legal, but if you're building, I want in. It wasn't just encouragement, it was validation. The kind that reminded me I hadn't imagined the impact I'd made. People remembered. People trusted me. I circled back to a former colleague I'd always respected, Lisa. Sharp, reliable, honest to a fault. We'd worked on a major rollout together that went off without a hitch, mostly because she held the back end together while I handled the client side. I called her up, asked for her take. If I started something, I said, something lean but serious, would you consider joining down the line? There was a pause. Then, if you're asking, I'm interested. I hung up the call and just sat there for a while. I'd been bracing for rejection, for skepticism, for the kind of vague encouragement that leads nowhere. But what I got was something different. Commitment. Not everyone said yes, but no one laughed me off either. And that was enough. I started sketching it out. Not a full business plan yet, just rough outlines. What services I'd offer, which clients to approach first, what problems I could solve better than the companies already out there. I made a list of tools I'd need. A website builder, project management software, an invoicing platform. Nothing fancy, just enough to look real and to be real. I even ran the name by a few people. Simple, clean, something that didn't scream startup but whispered trust me. Most of them nodded. One said, that sounds like you. And that's what I wanted. Not a brand that sounded big, a brand that felt true. The momentum was building. Every favor I called in, every honest answer I got back, it all added to this quiet certainty in my chest. I wasn't begging. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was offering something solid. And slowly, people were starting to say yes. I didn't have a corner office, I didn't have a team, I didn't even have a proper desk chair. What I had was a half-rented seat at a co-working space that smelled like burnt espresso and ambition. It was loud, chaotic, full of freelancers and dreamers. But it was mine. My name was on the reservation. My key fob worked at the door. It was the first time in weeks I felt like I was walking into something instead of being shown the way out. The LLC paperwork cost more than I wanted it to. Every click felt like a commitment I couldn't afford to undo. But when the confirmation email landed in my inbox, something shifted. This wasn't a thought experiment anymore. It was a business, a real one, with a name, a structure, a tax ID. I bought the domain that night. The first name I wanted was taken, of course, but the second one fit even better. Simpler, cleaner, less ego, more purpose. It wasn't flashy, but it didn't have to be. It just had to be real. Something people could type in and say, yeah, this looks legit. I kept things lean. A basic website template, a free logo from a friend who owed me a favor. I wrote the copy myself, straightforward, no jargon. Just, here's what I do, here's how I do it, here's how to reach me. It felt good, honest, no pretending to be bigger than I was, just showing up exactly as I am. The first invoice I sent out was for $1,400, a small consulting project for an old client who didn't care that I didn't have a big name behind me anymore. They trusted my brain, not my business card. When the money landed in my account 3 days later, I stared at the transaction for a long time. It wasn't a windfall, but it was the first dollar I'd earned on my own. I wasn't rich, not even stable, but I was in motion. Every morning I showed up to that co-working space like it was headquarters, checked email, followed up on leads, rebuilt the workflows I used to manage. This time, they were mine. Nobody told me what to prioritize. Nobody rerouted my strategy mid-project because of some upper management whim. If a decision needed to be made, I made it. If something broke, I fixed it. I didn't have a safety net, but I didn't have a ceiling either. Some nights, I drove home wondering if I was insane, bootstrapping a business out of severance dust and pride. Other nights, I couldn't sleep from the excitement. Ideas scribbled on napkins, scribbled on the backs of receipts, momentum in my veins. I wasn't rebuilding the past. I was building from the ashes, and this time the foundation was mine. The days started to blur. Morning light meant email catch-ups, client calls, cold outreach. Afternoons meant design tweaks, back-end builds, fixing bugs I hadn't even known existed until everything broke at once. Nights were where the real grind happened. Pitch decks, legal documents, contract templates, branding polish. There were no breaks, no weekends, just progress and exhaustion. And somehow, I didn't care. 14-hour days became the norm. My desk at the co-working space turned into a second home. My laptop was practically glued to my fingertips. Meals were whatever I could eat one-handed. Protein bars, vending machine coffee, stale sandwiches. My screen time was through the roof, and I kept falling asleep with my browser still open to project dashboards. I should have been burning out. In the past, I would have been, but this time it felt different. There was no manager breathing down my neck. No soul-killing meetings about KPIs that didn't mean anything. Everything I did mattered. Every line of code, every sentence of copy, every client call was for something I was building. One night, around 2 a.m., I sat back and looked at what I'd made. My first client's dashboard was live. The analytics were clean. The brand colors were on point. They were happy, really happy. They sent a message. This is exactly what we needed, better than what we had before. That message lit something inside me. Not ego, purpose. I wasn't just another vendor to them. I was the solution, the trusted one. More inquiries started rolling in. A referral here, a LinkedIn message there, word of mouth doing what ad campaigns couldn't. I said yes to everything. Too much, probably. But I was terrified the momentum would stop if I took my foot off the gas. I was making mistakes too, lots of them. Overpromising, underestimating timelines, forgetting to track hours. But I learned fast, adapted faster. Every failure taught me something. Every fire I put out on my own added another layer of confidence. I wasn't perfect, but I was in it. There were days I crashed hard, days I questioned what the hell I was doing. I'd wake up with anxiety so loud it felt like sirens, but then I'd open my laptop, see progress, see movement, and it was like oxygen. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving myself right. I wasn't the guy who got fired anymore. I was the guy building something real, from scratch, with nothing but guts and grit. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel tired. I felt alive. It came through on a Tuesday morning, the kind of gray, overcast day where nothing usually happens. I was deep in a rabbit hole of SEO tweaks on my half-built website when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen stopped me cold. Ben Tran, former client, former fire drill actually. The kind of client who'd call at 9 p.m. on a Friday and say, "We go live Monday," and I'd make it happen. Back when I still had a boss. Back when I had to get every idea approved by someone who didn't understand the work. I hadn't expected to hear from Ben again. Last I knew, he'd moved his business to a bigger agency. But the message was simple. "Hey, heard you're on your own now. Need a quick analytics setup for a client pitch. You open to freelance?" I stared at the screen longer than I needed to. It was a small ask. A few hours of work. Nothing big. But it would be my first. The first time someone paid me. Not the company, not a manager, me. For what I brought to the table. No overhead, no approval chain, no gatekeeping. Just a handshake and a problem to solve. I replied in less than a minute. "Absolutely. I'll send over a scope and a timeline this afternoon." I had no template, no contract, no pricing model. But I figured it out. Googled the best practices, used a freelancer tool to draft a one-pager with deliverables and milestones. It looked clean. Legit. I hit send and waited, pretending not to refresh my inbox every 5 minutes. He signed it within the hour. I got to work that night, threw on a hoodie, brewed a second pot of coffee, and plugged in. It wasn't glamorous, just a data layer integration and some custom event tagging, but I treated it like it was a 6-figure project, because it mattered, because it meant something. 2 days later, I sent the deliverable, tight, polished, well-documented. I could have waited to hear back before invoicing, but I didn't. I wanted to feel the full cycle, did the work, sent the invoice, clicked submit with a weird mix of excitement and fear. The payment landed 48 hours later, $1,200. Not life-changing. But it might as well have been $1 million, because it was the first. And you never forget your first. I remember just sitting there staring at my account balance. Not because of the number, but because it was proof that I could do this, that someone believed enough in me to pay me. No middleman, no agency letterhead, just my name and my work. I bought a decent lunch that day, sat outside for the first time in weeks, let the sun hit my face. It wasn't just a client, it was confirmation. This thing I was building, it was real now. I didn't announce anything, no big posts, no, I'm thrilled to share that I've launched my own business, LinkedIn fanfare. Just kept my head down and did the work, let the results speak. Because I wasn't chasing claps, I was building something I could stand on. Ben referred me to someone in his network. That turned into a quick audit project, which turned into a short-term retainer. Then an old colleague messaged me out of nowhere. Hey, are you still freelancing? I've got a startup that needs help yesterday. I said yes before asking the scope. Then another client came through a mutual connection, a simple web optimization gig that turned into a full-blown rebuild. One client became 3. 3 became 7. I wasn't sleeping much. I wasn't saying no either. Because deep down, every new project felt like a quiet kind of justice. Not revenge, not even ego. Just this steady, undeniable rhythm whispering in the background. You made a mistake letting me go. I wasn't trying to prove them wrong anymore. I was just proving myself right. And the more I leaned in, the more things started to click. I hired a part-time assistant to help me track projects and manage invoices. She worked remotely out of Austin. Sharp, efficient, kept me sane. For the first time, I saw what it meant to delegate. Not because someone told me to, but because it made sense. Because I had more work than one person could hold. There were still bumps. Times I underestimated scope. Times I lost money. One client ghosted on an invoice and I had to eat the hours. Another tried to renegotiate mid-project. But each mistake became a lesson. I adjusted my contracts, tightened timelines, set firmer boundaries. And all the while, the business kept growing, quietly, steadily. No billboards, no marketing spend, just word of mouth and good work. Turns out, in a world of noise, quiet consistency travels far. Sometimes I'd pass my old office downtown, see the lights on late at night. I knew that feeling, working into the evening for a company that would never notice. But now, when I worked late, it wasn't for a job, it was for me. The client list grew, a couple of recognizable names, a few startups, a nonprofit that paid on time and made the work feel good. I built case studies, tightened the website, hired a designer to clean up the brand, still lean, still scrappy, but real. I didn't need to say anything to my old boss, didn't need to rub it in. The wins were enough. Each one a small, silent message that found its way back to the people who thought I was expendable. They let me go thinking they'd cut weight. What they did was set me free. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was deep in the weeds on a deadline when the call came in. Unknown number. Normally, I let those go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. Hey, it's Drew, from Iron Pine Media. I sat up straighter. Drew had been a tough client under my old employer, demanding, sharp, no time for fluff. I hadn't heard from him since I left. Just wanted to say, he continued, you're doing good work. People are noticing, including your old team. I laughed, not sure what he meant. Thanks, I'm just keeping my head down. Yeah, he said. Well, they're not. They just pitched me a new service package, called it Performance Suite Plus. It's almost exactly what you pitched me last year. Same dashboards, same reporting cadence, same deliverables, different branding. I felt the blood rush to my face. You're saying they're offering my services? Pretty much, he said. But here's the kicker. They used your name in the pitch. Said you helped develop the system back when you were with them. Tried to use that as credibility. There was a long pause. I stared at the wall of my co-working cubicle, the hum of other people's meetings, suddenly a low buzz in the background. They're watching you, Drew said, trying to reverse engineer your playbook. I thanked him for the heads up and hung up, slowly placing my phone face down on the desk. It shouldn't have surprised me. I built that framework while I was there. The dashboards, the methodology, it was mine. They didn't want it back when I was an employee. But now that it had momentum, now that I was the face of it, they wanted a piece. At first, I felt furious, like they were trying to erase what I'd built, then repackage it under their polished corporate branding. But the anger faded quickly, replaced by something else. Clarity. If they were watching me, if they were copying me, that meant they felt me. That meant I was making waves big enough for them to notice. And panic. That night I reviewed everything, my service offerings, my contracts, my differentiators. I tightened the language, sharpened the copy, added more protection to my IP. This wasn't just about defending what was mine. It was about staying ahead, staying original. Because here's what they didn't understand. You can copy the surface, but you can't steal the soul. They didn't know how to deliver the way I did. They didn't know how to build trust one conversation at a time, how to show up at 11 p.m. when a client panics, how to fix what's broken before they even notice. They could mimic all they wanted, but they couldn't be me. And that was the difference. It started subtle. A few clients mentioned they'd gotten offers. Your old company reached out, they'd say casually, like it wasn't a big deal. Said they could do the same work you're doing, but cheaper. At first, I brushed it off. Competition was normal. Business was business. But then the offers kept coming, too consistent to be coincidence. They were undercutting me hard, slashing prices, offering bundled services I knew they couldn't deliver properly. They were trying to squeeze me out before I could scale up. And they weren't just underpricing, they were talking. Quiet, backdoor conversations meant to plant doubt, telling clients I was a one-man show, that I didn't have infrastructure, that I wouldn't last 6 months. A few clients even forwarded me the messages. One in particular stood out. We're offering the same solution, but with full agency support and a more experienced team. Funny, since half of that team used to ask me how to build reports from scratch. It hit me in waves. First I felt insulted, then threatened, then resolved. They were playing dirty, but I wasn't going to play scared. I held my prices. I held my ground. Every part of me wanted to retaliate, to blast the truth, to expose how they were copying what they once dismissed. But that wasn't the move. I didn't want to win with noise. I wanted to win with proof. So I doubled down on quality, took extra care on every deliverable, spent more time on client calls, sent weekly insights instead of monthly ones, anticipated questions before they came up. I started tracking client feedback, organizing testimonials, building a real foundation, not just to survive, but to scale. I refined my brand, polished my messaging, upgraded my proposal decks. Nothing flashy, just sharper, more clear, more me. I launched a client onboarding system that made every new project feel seamless. Clients noticed. They didn't just stay, they referred me to others. One night I got a text from a longtime client. Just got pitched by old company again. Told them no thanks. I like dealing with people who don't treat me like a number. I stared at that message for a long time. Because that was it. That was everything. You can't poach trust. You can't discount your way into loyalty. You can steal the recipe, sure, but the flavor, the way it's delivered, that's personal. That's earned. They thought I'd flinch, but I held the line, and I let the work speak. There were days it felt like a war I didn't sign up for. Them with their glossy campaigns, investor backing, and 6-figure marketing budgets. Me with a 2-person operation, a rented desk, and a project tracker color-coded in Google Sheets. On paper, it was laughable. They were Goliath. I was David, without the slingshot at first. But here's the thing about being small. You can move. Fast. No layers of approval. No bloated meetings. No weeks of alignment just to make a basic decision. When a client needed something, I could give them an answer within the hour. When a campaign fell apart, I could rebuild it that night. I wasn't limited by a hierarchy. I was the hierarchy. They had scale, but I had fire. They still tried. I'd see them everywhere. Trade shows, webinars, LinkedIn campaigns targeting my niche. Polished, yes, but hollow. You could feel it, like someone trying to sound human through a script. Clients noticed too. A few reached out after bad experiences, frustrated by red tape and broken promises. One of them said, "They talk a good game, but it all feels processed, like fast food." I didn't need to compete on price or size. I competed on precision. I knew the pain points. I didn't offer 12 services. I offered the right one. And I didn't need a sales team. My results were the pitch. More than once, I heard the same thing. "You make us feel like we're your only client." I wasn't. But I made them feel that way because I gave a damn. Because I remembered what it was like to be the one waiting on a response. The one begging for clarity from an agency too busy chasing bigger fish. The best part? My clients started defending me. They'd shut down my old company's reps before I even heard about the pitch. One sent me screenshots. "We're happy where we are. He delivers what you only promise." Every time I saw one of those messages, it pushed me harder, worked later, smarter. Didn't complain, just kept building. They had investors. I had belief. They had headcount. I had hunger. And slowly their size started working against them. They couldn't pivot, couldn't customize, couldn't hold on to the people who actually did the work. Their churn rate climbed. Their reputation started to slip. Meanwhile, I was winning accounts they thought were locked down. Not because I was louder, but because I was better. Because I listened. Because I delivered. Because I cared more than they ever could from their boardroom high-rise. This wasn't a fair fight, but that's the beauty of being underestimated. You only have to win once to change the story. The call came late, 7:43 p.m. on a Wednesday. I was still at my desk, finishing a report that was due the next morning, fingers sore from typing, brain half-fried from back-to-back client calls. I almost didn't answer. The number wasn't saved in my phone, but something told me to pick up. "Hey, is this still your number?" the voice said, familiar but out of place. "Yeah," I said, sitting up. "Who's this?" "This is Carla, from Merton and Slate." I blinked. Merton and Slate was one of their flagship clients. Big, public, the kind of name they built their portfolio around. I hadn't spoken to Carla since before I was fired. "I hope I'm not overstepping," she said, her tone sharp but tired. "But I heard you're running your own shop now." "I am," I said carefully, not sure where this was going. She sighed, the kind of sigh that carries months of frustration. "We're done with excuses, missed deadlines, scope creep. 3 project managers in 6 months, and every time I ask a question, I get handed to someone new who needs to get up to speed. We're tired of babysitting our agency." I didn't say anything. I knew better than to gloat. I just waited. "You were the only one who ever knew what the hell was going on," she continued. "When you were there, things ran. You fixed problems before we knew they existed." I could feel it. The shift. The turning point. She lowered her voice. "Can we meet? I want to talk about moving the business over." We met the next day in a quiet corner booth at a downtown cafe. She was all business, folder in hand, contract questions ready. I didn't have to sell myself. She'd already made up her mind. She just wanted to know if I could handle the volume. I told her I could, and I meant it. By the end of the week, the contract was signed. 6 figures, retainer, 3-month trial, option to extend. It was the biggest deal I'd ever closed, not just in dollars, but in symbolism. They weren't just any client. They were the jewel in the crown of the company that fired me, the one they bragged about in every sales pitch. And now they were mine. I didn't celebrate right away. I went home, sat on the edge of my bed, laptop still glowing on the nightstand. I read the contract 3 times just to make sure it was real. Then I closed my eyes and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. They had underestimated me, and now one of their biggest clients had walked straight through my door without me even knocking. This wasn't luck. This was earned. Quietly, patiently, one project at a time, and now the tide had turned. It hit me as I waited at the red light. The sun was low, casting long shadows on the pavement, and there it was, their building. The one I used to rush into every morning, coffee in one hand, backpack over my shoulder, hoping that maybe that day someone would see what I was doing, hoping for validation, hoping for something more. 12 months to the day. Exactly 1 year since I got that email. Since I walked into that HR office, sat across from my manager, and got told I wasn't loyal enough, that I was done, that I was forgettable. Now I looked at that building and didn't feel anger or bitterness, just a strange, quiet clarity. I had more clients than they did now. I knew that, not because I was guessing, but because I'd seen the numbers. I'd seen the contracts come over. I'd picked up accounts they used to brag about. Companies that once sat in their boardroom now showed up in my inbox asking for deliverables, strategy calls, performance reviews. But the part that really landed, the part that made me realize how far I'd come, their staff started applying to me. It started slowly. A LinkedIn message here, a quiet email there. Hey, not sure if you're hiring, but I've heard great things. I'm looking for something smaller, more intentional, more human. Some of them were people I remembered from team meetings. Some had once looked through me like I was just another cog in the wheel. Now they were asking if there was room in what I was building. And the truth was, I didn't hold it against them. I wasn't building this thing to gloat. I was building it because it deserved to exist. Because I deserved to exist outside of their limits, their rules, their shallow vision. I rolled past the building and glanced up at the glass facade. Same logo, same sterile walls, probably still the same stale coffee in the break room. But everything was different now. I thought about all the nights I stayed late there, all the ideas they passed over, the contributions they minimized, the potential they missed, and how all of that, the rejection, the dismissal, the silence, had turned into fuel. The light turned green. I didn't look back. I had a meeting across town, new client, bigger than any I'd worked with before. I was wearing the same watch I wore the day I got fired. But this time, I wasn't counting the minutes until someone noticed me. Now, they were coming to me. That's what full circle looks like. Quiet, focused, unstoppable. I used to think I'd want some big moment, a confrontation, a final scene. Maybe bump into my old manager at a conference, let him see my name on the badge, maybe even say something smug like, "Looks like things worked out after all." But that moment never came, and somewhere along the way I stopped waiting for it. The truth is, I didn't need revenge. Not anymore. What I built, the clients, the trust, the reputation, it was worth more than any apology or acknowledgement could ever be. I wasn't out to prove them wrong. I'd done something better. I'd proven me right. It's quiet now. The panic is gone. The imposter syndrome doesn't bark as loud as it used to. I have a team, small, loyal, driven. People who believe in what we're doing. People who ask questions not to climb a ladder but to build something real. And I lead them not with power, but with purpose. We have systems, clients on monthly retainers, a pipeline that stretches months ahead. When problems come up, we solve them. When clients need help, we answer. We don't overpromise. We don't ghost. We don't hide behind jargon. We show up. We do the work. Some of the bridges I crossed to get here burned behind me. But I didn't light the match. I didn't burn them. I replaced them, brick by brick, with trust, delivery, honesty. Now when people ask how I got started, I tell them the truth. I got fired for going to a job interview. I had no plan, no safety net, just a quiet fury and a list of things I knew I could do better. And I did. Sometimes I still get messages. Former colleagues, former bosses. Congrats on everything you've built. I appreciate them. I do. But I don't feel the urge to respond with anything more than a polite thank you. Not because I'm cold, but because I'm done. That chapter's closed. Now, my eyes are forward, focused on what's next. Because what I've built, it's not just a business. It's a life I own. It's mornings without dread. Clients who respect me. Work that aligns with who I am. And I didn't get it by playing safe. I got it by betting on myself when no one else would. No resentment, no bitterness, just clarity. I didn't burn bridges. I crossed them, and I never looked back.